Around early high school, I decided to start outright collecting DVDs. In the years since, the collection has mostly become Blu-rays. Every collector has different ones they buy, and different reasons. And if you want to see the full collection, you can. If you support me right now on Patreon, you'll be able to go to the exclusive video series where I go over my entire collection. Go check it out for yourselves and become a patron today. What these videos are about is a more condensed version of what I buy on Blu-ray. I take a look at several categories of types of movies, types of TV shows, or even just types of DVDs and types of Blu-rays that I pick up. And so of course, when you're talking about types of movies and types of Blu-rays too, there's no better place to start than the Criterion Collection. Now, for those that don't know, Criterion is a company interested in preserving classic film. They tend to do the absolute best of the best. Films you'd never see anything else like. And this ranges from Akira Kurosawa to John Waters. Now, one thing that personally stands out to me, because of my personal taste, is how the Criterion Collection tackles animated films. There's only a handful. One of those films is Fantastic Planet, a paper animation from France.
C'est le grand Zarek qui, au 3e millénaire avant l'ère de Crope, créa la première civilisation pyramique. Certains savants expliquent ainsi la naissance de l'idée de méditation. D'autres pensent que Zarek est immortel et que des flammes du temps, il réapparaît dans la réalité tournoyante et infiniment multipliée pour combattre ceux qui, dans l'esprit drague, cherchent à mourir.
The Blu-ray even includes other short films from that same director. A thing pretty common for the collection. If you don't think I've said enough to go justify buying the Blu-ray or just checking it out on the Criterion channel, go listen to the Sardonicast, because they really do go into it.
Would you recommend this movie for children?
Allez, liquidons-les.
Fantastic Planet, or La Planète Sauvage. And I guess the more accurate English translation would be The Wild Planet, because that's what they keep saying in the movie. But anyway, I really hope we get past that point of the implication that animated films are just for kids.
Oh,
I hope that there's
stupid, isn't it?
more adult-oriented animated films that get released in the future, and I hope it becomes more commonplace. Because there's so much you can do with animation.
Yeah, such a waste to
Yeah.
just make kids' movies with it.
That's a limitation that you place upon it.
There's a joke how a requirement for entry for animated films is to have the word fantastic in the title. And if you're not sure that that point's been proved already, let's talk about the fantastic Mr. Fox.
Honey, I'm 7 non-Fox years old now. My father died at 7.5. I don't want to live in a hole anymore, and I'm going to do something about it.
This was a film I'd heard about for over a decade, and the only things I'd actually heard was that it was a perfect film and that I needed to watch it. Films like that don't always deliver, you know, the overhyping situation. But somehow Mr. Fox sure the hell did. I really love the stop motion of this film. The characters remind me of taxidermy animals, and somehow that's charming and natural, despite how creepy and unnatural that sounds. If you look it up, most of director Wes Anderson's films are already in the collection. And this one by itself convinced me that it is past time I checked those out too.
That was pure wild animal craziness.
Now, like I said, there's actually not much for animation in the collection, so I'm kind of stuck talking about a movie that, well, to be fair, I want to talk about it anyway, because I've never seen anything like The King of Jazz. I'm going to get into why I bought The King of Jazz first off, and that's because when I was reading the special features, I found out that they secured the rights to 2 Oswald the Lucky Rabbit cartoons. The shorts aren't on the Blu-ray for no reason. Oswald the Lucky Rabbit cameos in King of Jazz, and that's half the reason he's on this disc. When I looked it up, it turns out The King of Jazz went over budget during filming so hard MGM had to make other several short films reusing assets and music and animation cells from King of Jazz just to try to make their money back. The Criterion Collection scoured everything they could to get every single one of those short films onto the Blu-ray. Now, considering I haven't talked about the movie itself, you may be worried it's a bit of a dud, but no, the movie's actually quite charming. It's hard to describe the plot of a movie that is just a concert. See, The King of Jazz refers to Paul Whiteman, who at the time was basically the King of Jazz. And for the record, this movie's pretty old. Jazz actually kind of meant like pop back then. You could effectively have called him the King of Pop. The movie gets a bit surreal, and it gets a bit grand. It's a movie I liked just fine while watching, but the longer it stays in my head, the more I definitely think about it. There's so many very interesting stylistic choices, and there's a nice variation between the music that plays. But King of Jazz is definitely the kind of movie where you'll likely either really get into it, or it will leave you interested. And I think for a movie that is just a concert, that's probably the best case scenario.
Why, here comes Paul himself. Hello, Charlie. Hello, Paul. Where's the band? Are you standing in front of them? Right in here. In the band. I'm really very proud of the boys. Some of them have been in the band for a great many years. Mike, how long have you been in the band?
11 years, Mr. Whiteman.
Alright, let's cut to the chase here. You can't talk the Criterion Collection and animation without talking about Watership Down.
Is it a kind of dream?
Watership Down is not my favorite animated movie. It's not even one of my favorite animated movies. And yet every time it's not in the top 10 of a best animated films list that I happen to see online, I always end up questioning who wrote the article. Speaking of online, Watership is certainly famous online as the Violent Bunny movie, but for those of us that actually watched it, it's a shockingly real and bleak film that really feels like nothing else. Sure, Watership Down is violent. It's full-on gory. But from the animation style to the dialogue, there's a realness this little cartoon has that other films just can't compete with.